All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us live this afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm so excited about today's session with Mary. We're already on session 3, which just feels so crazy, but we're going to be talking about how to use AI with your students. So my name is Lauren Dennis with Design for Learning. I'll be hanging out in the chat and dropping in all the links that you need. I'll also be over there if you need any help. And then we will be answering questions throughout the masterclass and at the end. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat. And just a quick reminder that this webinar is live. So we will not be sending out a recording, but we will have a replay that will go live later this evening. So with all of that, I'm going to turn it over to your facilitator, Mary Howard.
Hi there. Yes, awesome. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And we are going to talk about classroom integration of AI, using AI with students. And it's a hot topic because it is a challenge. And we're trying to find ways that we can effectively use AI with our kiddos in the classroom. So my background is that I am a sixth grade teacher. I am currently teaching sixth grade in Grand Island, New York. And if you don't know Grand Island, New York, I like to refer to it as a pork chop shaped island that is sandwiched between Niagara Falls and Buffalo, New York. So I'm on the far western side of the state. And I teach ELA and science with my sixth grade students. And I also authored a book on artificial intelligence. And if you're interested in kind of learning a little bit more about me, I've left all my socials here on the page. Certainly follow me there, especially TikTok. I do a lot of sharing on TikTok. And also at the very end, I'll share those socials again with you. But let's just dive right into it with kind of a question and answer to talk about maybe what people are thinking here. What excites you most? Or on the opposite end of that scale, what worries you the most when you start thinking about students using AI? So feel free to, pop that in the chat. We'll give a little good old teacher wait time. And honestly, when this question comes up, the most common comments that I get on this particular question is they're all very fearful. They're very fearful things. Absolutely, like cheating on essays. I'm an ELA teacher, so it is absolutely one of my biggest fears is having them use AI to steal their learning. There it is again. Yep, lack of academic integrity. AI will be the thief of knowledge and learning. I hear this a lot. I did a seminar last week with some older learners, some retired PhD academics, and that was their biggest fear, was kind of that loss of critical thinking. There you are. You popped it in just in time. Yes, students will stop thinking for themselves, that we're going to kind of lose this independent thought. They're going to use AI as a crutch. They're going to use AI to cheat. And these are all real and valid concerns. And as we move forward, we like to think of, I'm not going to have all of the answers here today. We're going to talk about some of this near the end of the presentation and talk about academic integrity and the importance of it, and the importance of training our students to use it effectively. But we also kind of want to frame this in as positive of a way as possible, and start to think about how effective use of AI needs to be modeled with our students, and it needs to be shown to students, and how helpful it can be to educators. And so what we're going to look at today in our time together is really to learn how AI can be integrated into our daily instruction in a myriad of ways, while continuing to foster that critical thinking piece, which we are also very concerned about. So I'm going to break this into 3 sections. I'm going to start talking about daily instruction integration. We're going to just look at how it can help the educator in instruction components, different kinds of things that we can use with AI to integrate into instruction. In the middle, we're going to address that critical thinking piece, and we're going to look at ways that I've been able to integrate AI into the classroom with students using that AI to facilitate their learning and not take away or detract from their learning. And that kind of goes right into AI as a thinking partner, and other ways that we can use it in terms of diving more deeply with AI. I do want to preface all of this with this, because I'm using this term AI very, very loosely, and I know we've had several webinars here already on it. And so when I'm referencing AI, it's going to be this broad topic of generative AI. And so this can be a myriad, again, of things. Anything that is new content that can generate new content in a heuristic manner. It might be text, it might be image, music, audio, videos. We're not going to dive specifically into tools. So I'm not going to say, use this tool for this and use this tool for this. I'm really looking at this through a broad lens because there now are so many different tools out there that can do so many of these different things. So our first category is talking about the daily instruction integration, ways that we can productively introduce AI tools for daily instruction. And we can kind of subtitle this as, using AI as a co-teacher. How can it support us in our classrooms? And here I'm going to be giving you just this large list of things you might already know, but maybe you didn't realize that AI can do to support us as teachers to kind of get us going in our classrooms. And of course, the number one thing for many of us is we can use these AI tools, whether it's a chat bot or a candy-coated platform that's pre-packaged, I guess you could say, with built-in AI features like lesson planning. And this is really wonderful for educators on the go. Getting ready, here we go. Here's a lesson plan. Here's what I need. AI can produce these things for us to get us started in our classroom. A second type of thing would be aligning our things to standards. This tends to be one of those tasks that often, we kind of forge ahead knowing what we need to teach, and we know what our lessons want to look like, and we know what we want to do with the students. But sometimes we have to sort of back up and say, how does my lesson align to my standards? And AI is really great for that. AI is really good at analyzing what you're doing in your classroom and taking that and applying it to its bank of knowledge on what your current standards are. So I always put standards alignment in there as another great use and great tool. So this one could take on many forms. This is a broad category of something that AI is really, really good for when I'm getting ready to start my class, and it's generating lists of information, and that can run the gamut from listing me vocabulary words that are suitable for my grade level for the topic that I'm teaching, or taking it to the other end and having it generate comments, maybe comments for report cards or comments that I'm going to put on worksheets or papers or things as I'm grading them. Just using it as your ideation tool, using it to generate some of these ideas that we truly need support with as we're getting ready to step into the classroom. This one might seem kind of silly, but I really love popping this one in here because it's kind of one of those things people don't realize that AI has the ability to do. And these start coming into play when I'm building my bell work or I'm building engaging activities for my students. You might not realize that AI can create some really clever brain teasers for students. And this is one that I had, I believe it was ChatGPT generate for me. And these are little emoji riddles. And so I just asked it to create a list of emoji riddles for students to solve that were that would correspond with fairy tales, from Hansel and Gretel to The Ugly Duckling to Rapunzel. I didn't give it the list of fairy tales. I gave it a very broad category. And so now I'm able to take these little brain teasers one at a time and pop them into a bell work on a morning slide and say, let's take a minute and kind of have a brain warm up using the brain teasers that AI generated for me. So that's kind of a fun one to look at. Staying in the same category of fun ideas, I'm a big fan of riddles, and I was able to realize that AI does a nice job of making age-appropriate riddles that get their brains thinking just a little bit, but not too much. And you can see these are very common objects that these riddles are about. I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body. Looks like my text got cut off. But as the students see that riddle on a bell work or at a big opening slide of the day, they can think about it. They can talk about it with a neighbor and come up with an answer, or we can share the answer and talk about why it fits the riddle. So that was another little great time saver that we can use AI for. And then again, would you rather questions. These are great for icebreakers. These are great for just starting your class to get kids thinking. And this is another thing that AI can produce in that whole list category in volumes. Lots and lots of would you rather questions. And this is another one that's really great for icebreakers because students can turn to a partner and not only they can say, whether they choose a pet dragon or a pet unicorn. I'd probably take the dragon. But they can actually explain to their neighbor why. And it's a good way, really at the beginning of the year, for students to get to know each other. So I kind of file all of these three things down here under that category of generating lists. What that would look like in a classroom, this is an actual example of my bell work for my classroom that I use every single day. And one thing that I think is quite remarkable is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items on this bell work that I pre-created that now last me my entire school year. So what I did with this is, so you can see everything that I have a red star next to is something that I had AI generate for me. But I didn't have the AI list feature generate just one thing for me. I had it make about 195 of each of these things. So we start up here, and I told ChatGPT to generate me about 195 age-appropriate inspirational quotes. And so I have all of these. I told it to make me 185 riddles with the solution. I asked it to generate every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, excluding weekends, between the beginning of September and the end of June. And I asked it to create a joke of the day with a solution. And so why I bring this up is because what I was able to do with all of this information that was generated by AI is I was able to use Canva, if you're familiar with Canva, but it has a feature on it called bulk create. I was able to take all of these things and bulk create 185 slides for my entire school year. So now when I come into class, my warm-ups are all ready to go. I have an inspirational quote with today's date, with a warm-up, with a joke of the day, and all I need to do is fill out this part. What supplies do they need for the day? What's on our daily agenda? And what's the homework for the day? So it has saved me a lot in the long run, because I don't have to okay, what am I going to do today? What's my quote going to be? I have a lot here right in front of me. So I thought this was a really good example of a robust way we can take AI and lift that load for us in our classroom prep. Moving on. This whole concept of defining vocabulary, in my opinion, has really changed a great deal for both students as well as teachers, because now we have a tool in our hand that doesn't define one word at a time. It can define banks of words at a time, and we can modify the level of definition we're getting back. I say that because I can't tell you the number of times I have encouraged a student to use a dictionary to look up a word, and when they've gone to look up that word, it just had the same word and it ends in ing, and they still don't know what the meaning of the word is. And so, we can start using AI to support us in our own vocabulary words that we're using in our class, in the definitions being specific to our lexile that we need with our students, our grade level, content, topic, and definitions that are useful and understandable for our students. But the students can also do that as well. So I feel like we're kind of reaching a point where we won't be using, I historically used dictionary.com in the past few years, or even had them Google a definition. And I think we're reaching a point where we're going to start kind of jumping over that and directly into using AI, both as teachers and as students, to start giving us our definitions, but allowing us to modify the definition response that's coming back to us in a way that makes it more understandable. So, and here my list, kind of amusing, but here my list of terms was actually generated as a filler for the end of a class that I was doing with students. So we've been doing a crime scene in our class, and if you've ever done stations with students, you might know that early finishers are like, oh no, and you've got several of them working over here, and you have several early finishers over here, and you do not know what to do with those early finishers. And so this was something I was able to generate really fast. And it was just, I asked for a list of terms associated with the genre of mystery, and it came up with this list of terms, this list of definitions, which I was very quickly and easily able to plop into a crossword puzzle. So now I have something for my early finishers to do. So it was kind of a quick way to generate a resource for the students to use to sort of keep them a little bit occupied as they were finishing their stations early, because it does happen. And on that note, talking about reading passages and generating questions. That's one of the most wonderful things about these large language or language learning models, is the fact that they can write passages, but not just that. And they write very well. They write without errors, without grammar mistakes. I can't say they write without content mistakes. I'm sure that's something that's been talked about in previous sessions, because that is one of the inherent risks with AI. But They also can level reading passages for us, which is amazing. So if we give a bot, if we give AI our vocabulary and our topic and our content area, and we ask for passages at different levels, we are taking what our students need, especially our students in special needs, and providing them with a more valuable resource than just the one resource that we've often had over the years, which is what's pre-written. And I find this to be incredibly valuable with my students with special needs. And then, of course, you can take it a step further, which many of us have probably already discovered. And once that passage is written, we can follow up and ask for multiple choice questions. We can follow up and ask for true and false questions, fill in the blank questions, and we can continue and get all of this information that can now be used quite productively in our classrooms. So this example here is just a very small example of States of Matter passage that I had ChatGPT write for me. And then I followed up at a later time to get some questions, comprehension questions from my students. And rubric writing, again, this is a great thing. Lots of people are raving about that AI has the ability to do. I do mine in ChatGPT, but we have lots of tools out there that are now, I call them candy coded, and that's probably a phrase that seems unusual, but we have lots of tools out there that now have programming over the top of the underlying language model. I call them candy coded. Why? Because they're a little bit easier for us to use. And so, they have this pre-built feature that you click a button, type in some information, and you're going to get yourself a rubric, and you don't have to prompt engineer as much as you would on a different site like ChatGPT. However, either way, you're getting useful resources. This one is a rubric. It's one of the first things I discovered when I was playing with AI, playing with ChatGPT 2 years ago. Kind of hard to believe. 2 years ago, but discovered how I could get myself this beautiful analytical rubric by typing in a little bit of information and doing a little prompt engineering. And it has changed things dramatically, whether I'm creating the entire rubric or whether I'm just using AI to give me the stuff in between, which sometimes, if you've ever written a rubric, it's not necessarily the rubric itself that's hard. It's thinking about what 1 or 2 words we need to change in our middle columns that sometimes is more challenging than anything else. I often know what criteria I want, and I often know what the good ones are going to look like and what the not so good ones are going to look like and what I'm looking for. For me, it's the in-between stuff. And that is one of the things that I use AI for when I'm building rubrics. Okay, going along with this idea of list creating that we talked about a few minutes ago, this idea of generating examples is awesome. And it can happen when the students are in the room with you, or maybe minutes before the students are coming right into the room with you. Because often we reach a point in our classrooms where we're asking students questions, we're asking them to give us examples, we're giving examples, and then everything stalls. And so having AI in your back pocket, having a chat bot live and open and ready to go is a really great way to get examples that we can continue providing to the students. The analogy I like to use here is when I'm teaching kinetic energy and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm heading out the door. The last thing that I actually have is kinetic energy. So I rely on ChatGPT to give me those examples of kinetic energy to share with the students. And so it's just a really great way to get it to generate some examples that can be relevant to what you're teaching. The one right here was actually from a student teacher of mine. And she was struggling with, what can I ask the students is my question out the door. I said, give it a try. Ask ChatGPT what it suggests. And what's wonderful about these tools, as we've probably already discovered, you have endless options. You don't like the first 10 that it gives you, ask for 10 more. Ask for 10 more. It's going to continue giving examples until you really find some that you like and some that are useful for what you're doing. So mentor text, I am finding more and more, is something that I really appreciate that AI is able to do for me and able to do for students. So a lot of times we ask our students to write, and again, this kind of dabbles in one of the fears that many of us have had, about it doing the writing for the students. And so I like to talk about this topic from a perspective of it's model writing. It's generating mentor text for students so that they understand the format of the writing we're asking them to do. And so my example here comes from a science perspective because I'm a science teacher. And it's having a claim, evidence, reasoning report written. And what's so nice about it is when you prompt engineer, when you put in the information that you have just taught. So for me, I have my students make these kinetic energy popsicle stick chains. They weave these popsicle sticks together and they make these massive long chains and they explode them all over the classroom. And it's a great big fun, but a lot of mess. And then they have to take evidence. They have to take qualitative evidence that shows that energy transferred through that system. So first of all, their CER has many layers to it, right? They've got their own observations, their own experience, and all of the things that they have done. And they have to write this novel piece of writing, this new piece of writing that hasn't been written before because it's based on their own experience. Yet I need to be able to share with the students an example of what I am expecting. And so here's where this mentor text, this model text really comes into it for me, because I can support them in what the claim is, because they all pretty much have the claim, because that's what we're trying to prove in our investigation. The evidence is going to be specific to the students. The evidence is something they've already written. And so going into that conversation about, academic integrity and, supporting students in writing, but not having them use AI for the writing, this is a good example because the evidence was gathered by them. They wrote that in pen and pencil. They wrote that sitting at their popsicle stick chain. Now they have to take their evidence and pull it into the CER. And so when I'm seeing their piece of writing, I know it's not written by AI because I see their evidence that they created. And so they pop that into their CERs. And of course, the reasoning is the really tough part. The reasoning for my science kids is the thinking part. Why and how did that kinetic energy move through the system? And so not only does model writing support the student and showing them how it's expected to look, but honestly, it supports me as the teacher teaching that form of writing, especially when we're dealing with a set of standards, at least with science. And I think lots of other subjects, next generation standards have all rolled out relatively recently. We're all kind of struggling to get by. And learn all of the next generation standards. So this is a nice little lift that AI can give us. Okay, so that's been me talking for a little bit, and I do want to give us a break and do a quick little activity that I think AI can support us with. So what I'm going to do here, I've got to just exit out of the actual presentation. I love doing this with my students in the classroom. It can be used in any content area, any subject area, and it elicits conversation, which, as we know, is super important with our students. And so what I like to do is I use this template and I give my students a set of 3 die, a yellow one, a white one, and a green one. And I have AI generate questions for the students to discuss. The first time I did this was on April 8th of last year. If anybody happens to know what happened April 8th of last year, put it in the comments. But it was April 8th of that year and the event took place and I wanted them to discuss it on the next day. So what I had ChatGPT do is I had it make these prompts for me. So I've already pre-written a prompt and I'm going to pull it into ChatGPT. We're going to put it into our discussion questions, roll a die, and see what question I'm going to ask you guys. So that's what we're going to do. So my prompt is pre-written here. I'm going to come on over here to ChatGPT and put that prompt in here. And it's telling it to generate 6 interpersonal question stems for participants attending a webinar entitled Using AI with Students. And they should be based on content that they just heard that's focused on building AI into daily instruction. So good job, ChatGPT. I'm being a little careless. I'm not proofreading these. But I'm going to take these and I'm going to put them into, that's not the template. I'm going to put them into that template. Let's just move my prompt aside. Okay. Paste them in. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to only do one, but you could do understanding questions and we could do self-expressive questions. But for us, let's just do one set of 6 questions. And I know that's probably very difficult for people to read, so we'll zoom in so we can see it. All right, so we have 6 questions and I'm going to go roll a die and we're going to come back here and I'm going to ask that question to the group. So here we go. That's it. Ooh, number 6. All right, here's our question for the group. What is one small change you can make tomorrow to integrate AI that feels both exciting and manageable for you? So this is our time to pause and ask the question in the chat. What's one small change you can make tomorrow to integrate AI that feels both exciting and manageable for you? see what we get. Everybody's typing. That's why it's so quiet. I know how that is. So as we're kind of thinking about that, we are going to be moving on to some critical thinking and AI. And I'm going to start showing you some really, hopefully, cool examples of things that we can do with AI. And then for the sake of time, there we go. Got one. Two. Okay, so we have asked ChatGPT to create my entry ticket questions for the week. Yes, there we are. I didn't even think about, honestly, Brianna, I didn't even think about entry tickets. I was talking exit tickets. But one thing I do in my classroom is we do daily spirals, which is the same idea. I have them come in and I have them, I spiral back to content from previous days to sort of get them thinking. Same idea. And another one, yes, using AI to help flesh out rubrics. Awesome. If I see any more pop up, I'll pause and read them, but I'm going to just keep us going again for the sake of time here. So topic number 2, we're going to talk about AI and critical thinking. So we're going to dive a little more deeply into what AI can do to support us instructionally, but this is a little bit more of a deep dive here. So I want you to kind of think about this topic from the lens of student inquiry and students doing research. And so now we're thinking about this AI tool is not really in the hand of the teacher and the teacher's controlling the tool, but now the tool is a little bit more in the student's hands. And what is the student doing with this tool and how can it support their understanding and their learning? And so the first thing, yes, creative lessons in general, I love it. So the first thing would be to guide research questions to refine student inquiry. So let's say a student is doing a research paper and they have their research topic, and their research topic is solar energy good? And honestly, this is probably the extent of research question I might get out of my 6th graders. And so they take that research question and they put it into a student-friendly chatbot. And this is what it will give that student back. They're saying to the student, what do you mean by good? Are you asking about, and they try to get that student to be more specific. Are you asking about cost efficiency? Are you asking about environmental impact? And the student follows up, I want to know if solar energy is better for the environment. Okay, so they give some suggestions. Okay, so instead of yes, no question, back over here, how about asking how solar energy compares to other sources? So they modify it a little bit more. Then they give it the student another piece of advice. Okay. And so then they're trying to focus what they're asking. Whoops, sorry about that. And so this is a really great example of how we can go from a student's initial question, is solar energy good, to a final research question, how does solar energy reduce pollution compared to coal and natural gas? So what we've done here is we have supported student understanding. We have supported the student learning without giving them the information and without doing the thinking for them. We have just guided them into something that's much more productive. And that is something that happens solely within AI. So another great example, and this one I will confess, the next 2 examples sent me and my husband down a rabbit hole because of how exciting some of the things that AI can do are in these next 2 topics. So it can generate case studies and simulations for real world learning. So here we have a prompt that a student might use. I'm studying climate change. Can you give me an example of how this is taking place in the world? And that's a valid question. And I can definitely hear a student, curious about this. And so now we're seeing how AI can change the process of research with students. And in some ways, it can be a little bit overwhelming because before we used to get a lot of information, but we had to sift through and figure out what was good, what was valid, what was unbiased, what was reliable. Now we have a lot of information. We still have to sift through that information, but we're sifting through it in a slightly different way. And so here I have 8 examples of how climate change is taking place in the world. And so now this student doing this real world learning, not only do they have 8 examples, but they have to dive more deeply and determine, these sound really good. This sounds like good stuff. I want to learn more about ocean acidification. And so maybe they go down, like I said, that rabbit hole and they research that a little more, or they stick with their 8 and they change the lens of what they're looking at in terms of climate change. And so using these case studies and these simulations are giving them real world feedback on the things that they're curious about and the things that they are researching. But it goes even further than that. And this is the rabbit hole that I went down that I'm going to take you with me. So in particular, ChatGPT has a feature called Deep Research. And deep research is deep, authentic research that can be done using AI. In other words, it is using websites instead of the language learning model. It is pouring through the websites to find the content to support the item that you are researching. And so I'm going to show you the actual GPT response that came back through this deep learning model when I was doing my research. And when I say rabbit hole, I really wasn't kidding. Can you imagine being the 6th grader that just got all of this information back for their research? So starting up here at the top, let me see if I can zoom in so you can see better, because I know that's tiny on your screens. No, there we go. Okay, so it started up here. I'm studying climate change. Can you give me an example of how this is taking place in the world? So it was the exact same prompt that I gave to the language learning model. The only thing that I did differently was I selected the deep research option here within ChatGPT. And so this actually took ChatGPT quite some time to generate. Like, it took an excessive amount of time. I was startled. I would say upwards of 7 or 8 minutes it was processing. And as it was processing, it began to give me, all of these things, again, more information than I could possibly use and this student could possibly use. And then it stops and it follows up with, what is it you're specifically looking for? And I said data. And then it continues asking me questions, asking me follow-up questions. So I have to know my content. I have to know my topic to have it continue doing what it is and finding things that I need. And then I'm not going to go through all of this with you, but I want to point something out that is really amazing. Where it's getting the information is embedded into the text that it's retrieving. So if we go back over here to our original slide deck, I'm going to go one more slide over and I'm going to show you something. These were the websites that ChatGPT used in this deep dive. It used NASA, NOAA, the National Oceanographic, I can't even say it, Oceanographic Association, can't remember the letters, but everything that was either .NASA, .NOAA, there were no .coms, there were several .govs. It gave all of the sources for the data that it retrieved. And so I thought it might be an interesting pause point for us to stop, look at, and talk about how you feel about this, because I definitely have my thoughts in terms of being a 6th grade teacher and seeing all that information, and they're half positive and they're half questions about, like, how would this look and how would I do this? So I'm kind of curious. Would you trust the data is my first question. And how would you teach with this? Like, where would you have the student go next? I think that would be an important question. Because it's definitely tricky.
There's definitely a delay, Mary, so we can give them a couple minutes to talk.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
So I'll tell the story while people are thinking too. My husband is a researcher. He's a chemical engineer, and he's been doing a lot of research on a project that he's been working on at work. And he goes to the library and he uses all library resources, and he's really not an AI user, and his wife is an AI user. And I asked him what he was researching, and it was at the time that I was playing around with this particular tool, and he asked me to ask it his research question, which I can't share because it's confidential, but nonetheless, it's about engineering and something he's working on designing. Absolutely, he was astonished. Not only was the data relevant and helpful, it came from reliable sources and gave him information he hadn't been able to come up with himself. So it was really quite amazing to see how it supported his learning as an adult learner. So it says, have students create a log of their researching I can't read the rest of it in the comment. Allowing ChatGPT is all I can see on mine in the comments. Sorry, I just can't see the rest of what that comment says.
That's all I see too.
Okay. You know, that's a great point. It's the comment about depends on whether you accept the basic research of these organizations, you know, and that's always one of the things. Do we trust the organization? Do we trust where the data is coming from? And again, that kind of could bring us into a bigger, broader conversation. Absolutely. I think one of my thoughts on this is, you know, I've often directed my students when doing research, I've often directed them to the sites that I want them to use. And I've worked in conjunction very closely with our library media center person. You know, she would often be the one giving me the databases that the students are going to access when they're doing researching. And so now, you know, we can open a door. Is that a door we want to open? And is it a helpful one? Is it too much? Or is it just giving them the most accurate and valid information they can get? I don't really know the answers, but I think it's really exciting to talk about. Fact checking. I guess you have to look for facts and evaluate the validity of those facts. Definitely. That's a great comment. So I think it's really helpful to know this is out there. And I think it is going to kind of be the turn that we're going to begin seeing in a lot of student research work in the classroom. And then if anybody is still commenting, feel free. I will definitely take a pause and take a look at what you're sharing. So our third little topic here, and we're talking about AI and critical thinking, because this is the one that, you know, where the teeth gnashing comes in. And I feel like this is a really great infographic that is not my work. This came from the Michigan Virtual Organization. They do a lot of work with AI. I'm going to a tech conference there later this week. And what is really interesting is they almost categorized and gave really good examples of what AI shouldn't be doing, AI probably is doing, and where we want students to be and to go when it comes to AI. And so I put these little boycott symbols down at the bottom because this is our fear. And I see your comment on who sponsors the sites. That is another question to ask, definitely. So our fear is that AI is going to become a crutch. And so the way this data is organized is, you know, let's say we're working with a student that it just simply can't do the learning task. It is a little bit beyond their reach. This is going to be their first line of approach. They're going to go right to AI and they're going to have it do the writing assignment. And this is where everybody's fearful. And it's a legitimate fear. Going to the one student that can do the learning task, and sometimes they maybe need a little extra support, or they are just not your most motivated student. They rely heavily on AI-generated study notes to prepare for an assignment without guidance or instruction for educators. So they're kind of trying to skip steps because it's a lot of work. And if you teach, you know, that is what the students do. They have a tendency to avoid the things that are hard. And then finally, the student can do learning tasks on their own. They are a capable, competent student, but here we've got those procrastinators. They want to finish quickly. They want to get her done. They are not finding the particular project inspiring enough to put forth the effort. They are going to use AI as a crutch. Here's all our fear right here at the bottom of the chart. Right here in the middle of the chart is, I think, where we're starting to get, and I'd be happy if this is where we are with AI. I think good teachers are modeling and bringing their students to this point because AI can be an excellent assistant. Quite frankly, AI has been an excellent assistant all along. We just hadn't had these generative AI tools at the time, because AI, such as algorithmic thinking, spell checkers, calculators, things like that, that's been around for a while. And so an example of a student that can't do a learning task that might turn to AI would be an ELL student, relying on an educator for guidance and support using AI tools. And so they're getting pronunciation support like Google Translate, they're getting feedback, they're getting vocabulary help, conversation simulations. So we've seen this. This exists right now. The student with learning supports, they are using AI too. I mean, I use AI when it comes to grammar checking and spell checking and little things like that to use, you know, to support writing skills. And even the independent student uses these AI assistants. Well, even these assistants, but as well as maybe translation tools to take their, you know, communication with different countries, or maybe you're doing a collaborative project internationally. So sure, they can use AI tools for that. That exists. What we want in that perfect world, here we are on the top, right? The student that can't do the learning task finds a way to use AI to support their learning. And the example they're providing here, maybe they're doing some coding or programming. AI is really good at coding, and I'm going to show you a project with students that involves coding with AI that was so exciting. And so it's going to strengthen their skills. It's going to be that scaffold, because I think that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for it to do the work and be the crutch. We're looking at to scaffold and support students that can't do the task. In the middle, when the student can do the task, but they still need supports, well, here we go. We talked about crafting lessons. And so now we can craft lessons. Educators can craft lessons that integrate AI research tools for collecting data, analyzing discoveries, and publishing findings. Okay, so this is using AI as an accelerator for that learner. And then finally, this one, a student acquires and independently uses AI-guided directions to design a science experiment. Now we're building that heutagogy, which is one of my favorite new words. You might have to type it in the chat. We're finding self-directed learners. We're having AI start building self-directed learners. And though that is heutagogy, it is a step beyond the pedagogy that we all know. And it's a beautiful thing when we've got that self-directed learner. That's where we want them to be. So how do we get here? How do we get to heutagogy? How do we get these students to be self-directed and using AI to support them instead of as a crutch? Well, we talked about it at the beginning, and I love the people that said start with ethics, start with integrity, because it's a must. We have to. This is a little AI guide that I created for students, and it sort of guides them towards, okay, here are the things that are acceptable use in my classroom. Here are the things that I will allow you to use AI for. I'm very explicit in my classroom in terms of, I know AI is there, and I know that you know AI is there, and I will allow it because it is a tool that can support your learning when effectively used. And I go very directly into the don'ts. Do not do this. This is not okay. This is not ethical. Again, you tell someone not to do it, that doesn't mean they're not going to do it. And I get that. Interesting. Okay. And one of the things I do with this ethics guide, I thought I put in here, is I actually put it right into my syllabus. I have a digital syllabus they use right at the beginning of the classroom, and I talk to them directly about it. And I often say with teachers too, we need to model appropriate use. We need to show them that we use AI and be open about the fact that we're using AI, and model to them the effective ways to use AI. I don't use it to replace my thought. I use it to enhance my thought. I use it to accelerate my teaching and the things that I create and share with you, students. And then engage them in the learning. And this is, in my opinion, this is the most important one. It's not new that students have been Googling answers. It's not new that this one's been grabbing this one's crossword puzzle, and they sit next to each other and they look up all the answers together, and not only look at each other's papers, but use the computer. Knowing your learners is number one when it comes to keeping them from using AI tools to replace their thinking. We can't be lazy teachers. We have to make sure that we're engaged with them and the learning. And a great example of that is the essay writing process. I'm an ELA teacher. I have everything to fear when it comes to having AI replace my students' writing. However, I also know my learners. I know that if I'm writing an essay at the very beginning, what are we going to do? We are going to brainstorm. That is going to be a visible brainstorm. I will be able to see their thinking and see the path that their brains are heading down, whether that's narrative text or whether it's expository text. Our next step, well, we begin to organize our writing. That is very visible to me. I can very visibly see where their thoughts are going and what they are doing with their piece of writing. And then finally, we have the writing piece. Writing doesn't manifest on the page. Writing is a process. And everywhere along the steps in that process, I can see where my students might have used AI as a crutch to replace their thought, because it's going to be very apparent it isn't their thought. And so that's kind of the take that I've always had on, having them use AI to replace at least their writing pieces. So I want to share some fun things that you can do with students in the classroom, because to me, this is the most exciting part. So this is a project I did with my students recently, and we were learning Latin roots. Now, this is AI art, so it's still generative AI, but there's so many different AI art tools you can use out there. I happen to use Canva for this one. And they were given a creature builder menu, and we were trying to get them to start focusing on the Latin roots to words. And so I just wanted to give them a whole page of Latin roots. And I told them, pull all these Latin words together and make yourself a beast. Then have AI generate a picture of your beast. And just so you know, this is the frickin'. It is a frog chicken, but the frickin' is now like our class mascot because it is so popular. So this student was creating a frog chicken hybrid, and then I had them do a writing piece about their frog chicken hybrid. Did they use AI? Yeah. It created the frog chicken. Did AI write anything about the habitat, the development, the lifestyle? Nope, because that was a piece of fiction writing that the students kind of just invented along the way. And this was all done in Canva. The creature card was in a template in Canva, and they took the picture and used Canva AI to generate the picture, and then they typed it, and we put them up, and it was just a really terrific way to engage them in the learning and show them how we can appropriately use AI art in that particular application. So I mentioned to you that you can use coding in AI. And this project, and I'm hoping I have time to pop on over to it, this project was pretty amazing. So we were learning about tone and mood and writing. And I was trying to teach them how authors write with specific tones. And you can often dedicate a word to the tone in which a piece of writing represents. And I wanted them to sort of experience that firsthand. And so I had them pick a tone/mood word for a piece of writing. And I had them brainstorm what they wanted that writing to include. Maybe a particular character, maybe they wanted a purple dinosaur, or maybe they wanted, a bunch of chipmunks running through, I don't know, just something made up. And I let them use AI to write the story. And I let them prompt engineer, and I told them to be very specific that you wanted a passage to be written in a dreamy format, or whatever their mood word was, featuring their characters. And so what they saw was mentor text. What they experienced was mentor text being written with the tone, which was our target skill, right in front of their eyes. And so I took it one step further, however, and I used this site called CoSpaces. And I'm going to see if I can pop into this link. Let me turn off the laser for a second. This is actual student work that they did in virtual reality. And they took the passage that AI generated. They brought it into this virtual platform. We might not get to hear the sound, but you're going to kind of get to see her sing. Oh, the sound is working. So this is the student reading the passage that AI wrote. This is information she coded in this scene. She picked the characters, animated the characters, coded the path for the characters, and used AI to support her in this process. Walking through a goat, don't mind me. Here we go. So again, AI had written the passage. She chose the tone for the passage. And then we brought all of that into CoSpaces. So it was a really neat experience. And here we had mentor text. We had AI support ideation, support content assistance, help them with coding, which they will never forget, not in a project like this. And they were able to demonstrate their creativity in a truly unique way. So it was a really what I call an app smash between AI and virtual reality. So a lot of fun. And then we're not going to stop there, because I had a brainstorm today and I was really excited to share it with all of you today. So I'm going to share that as my last thing, and then we'll go to questions and we'll start to wrap things up. So the last thing I want to share with you that AI is going to do for my students is we are currently doing a crime scene. Here are my actual crime scene materials that the students are using. So they found out about a crime had been committed. We've been studying the genre of mystery. And they are looking at evidence. So they have all this evidence to look at. They have hair samples. They have footprints. Let me show you. They've got a little, it might look like Ted's Red Hot sauce, but that's actually blood. No, it's not. So they have hair follicles they're going to look at, and they have to piece together all this evidence, which is cool. But I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if they could actually interview the suspects? So here we have their suspects. And prior to today, my suspects had written bios and written information the kids would look at. And I was like, no, I want them to meet these suspects. These are all imaginary people. And so I found a way to have them meet these suspects. So these pictures of the suspects were generated with AI. That's cool. Now I have a face to go with the suspect name. But we took it one more step. We went in and we are going to have them meet the suspect because each suspect now has what is called its own GPT. So this is a GPT that I trained to answer the questions based on the crime scene that the students are reading about. So the only thing it can do is act like Lois Steen. The only thing it can do is answer questions about this crime scene. And so it's like the students are going to have the opportunity to sit with that person and interview that person through the lens of AI. So the way I'm planning on doing it, because my kids have no access to ChatGPT at my school, so I'm taking over the library, and since there's 6 suspects, we're setting one picture of the suspect at the top of the computer, and I'm logging into the 6 computers. And their teams are going to sit around and ask questions of each one of the suspects for 5 or 10 minutes, and then rotate through the 6 stations. And the day before they do that, they're going to have a writing exercise where they write down their questions and they're going to practice their questioning strategies. So I just thought it was a really great example of how we can take AI and truly make it a robust tool to support my students' learning. So I'm really excited to do this one. So I think that's kind of near the end. I think that gives us a lot of time to kind of wrap things up and answer questions people may have. And I'm honestly willing, if you want to dive more deeply into anything, we could take a look at that as well.
Okay, Mary, that was amazing. I feel like you shared so many amazing ideas. That like crime suspect thing is crazy. I don't know how you thought of that. That's like such a good idea. And it's so fun that your kids, they don't have access to ChatGPT, but you're finding a workaround.
And that's a lot of times that is the key. Yeah, is to find the workaround. And we have to protect student privacy because that's important too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's so fun. So many amazing ideas. And I love how you didn't focus on like the tool aspect because that's overwhelming. So many schools are using different tools, but these like practices in these simple ways that you can, start to incorporate it into your classroom. And then Miss Lee, I want to be in your class tomorrow to see how the crime scenes work. I do too. I'm like so curious.
I you know how you've got a good lesson is when you're just like kind of giddy about it. You're like so excited to see how the kids respond. So I can't wait.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link to the evaluation in there. We'd love to hear your feedback. And if you're joining us from Mary Star of the Sea, you will need to fill out the evaluation for attendance credit. And while we just wait for some questions to pop in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. So just a reminder, we have one more masterclass in this series. If you were in the first one, we have Kat Flippin coming back. And we're talking about part 2 and using AI with students, all on personalization and future readiness. It'll be a great session. And then, so I really, again, I hope you found some practical ideas from this session from Mary. She shared so many great ones. But again, we know that AI isn't just about tools. As Mary told us, it's about understanding how AI works and how to use it responsibly in education. And so that's exactly why we created the AI Literacy Academy that is launching April 1st. And so it's really designed to help build a strong foundation in AI. So what it is, how it works, and most importantly, how to use it safely, responsibly, and effectively in schools. So in the Academy, we cover essential AI literacy topics like bias, ethics, data privacy, along with hands-on strategies for using AI in a way that supports both teachers and students. So you'll get expert-led sessions, step-by-step protocols for safe AI use, PLC coaching, grade level specific lessons, co-learning experiences where you bring a virtual guest teacher in and kind of help teach AI literacy to your students, and so much more. And so I'm going to put the link in the chat for the Academy to join the wait list. You'll get like early access and a discounted price for that. And yeah, feel free to pop your questions in the chat. We'll hang out for about 6 more minutes and wait for any questions that you have. I know there's a delay, so we'll give it a few minutes.
I know, it's tough. Yeah, when the GPT thing has been an interesting evolution, I believe. So, a GPT, we hear the term GPT, and
Mhm.
they're just letters, right? But what we don't realize is all the kind of things that go into the back end of making, a GPT. And so when you're a little old teacher and suddenly you have a tool that allows you to create something that's customized that feels like you've just coded a robot, because to me that's what it felt like today. It felt like it allowed me to train a robot to act like Lois Steam, a fictional character that never existed. And in chatting with some of my colleagues, we started to go, wait a minute, couldn't we use a GPT to take on the personality of a character in a novel? And I was like,
Mhm.
why couldn't you? Why couldn't you do that and have the students interact with that character? But let's be honest, what's no better way of teaching a student about characterization in a novel than having them train the GPT?
Yeah.
So then we
Yeah.
kind of went down that direction. We were like, you're right. They could talk about the characterization and they could train the GPT and see if it acts like the character in the novel. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of ways you can go with that idea.
Yeah. That's
Um,
amazing.
so I like your question about the deep research icon. So if I'm let me get back into my regular Chat
Yeah.
GPT. So I do have the paid version of Chat GPT. That could be the difference. And so the deep research icon on my screen is just right here in the chat bar.
Mm.
I hope that answers your question. So it might be because of the version that you're using. Also, if you've got to be in the 4 Omega, and rather than any of the mini versions. It's a brand new feature that literally just popped up recently.
Mm. Are you in a free or paid account, Mary?
I'm
For
in a
Chat?
paid account.
Okay, you're in a paid account. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How long did it take you to like train the GPT? Like how long did you spend like going back and forth with it to kind of get it to where you wanted it to be?
I literally actually just did it today, this
Oh.
afternoon after school. So what I did, what I fed it, it's kind of like, feed me, Seymour. What I fed it was all of the information I had on my crime scene. So, that document actually that I showed you, this document, I
Mhm.
fed it this. So I took the
Okay.
PDF and I
Yeah.
put it in there, and then I
Smart.
started setting my limits. I want you to act like this character, and I want you to make sure you don't give anything away. I also fed it the solution to the crime, so it knew that, and it just kind of made it.
Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. Question from Mantis. Do you ever interact with GPT via voice? If so, what is the best way to do it?
Okay, so on my screen right now would be a really great example of that. And it's funny that you asked this question because I really debated this with the kiddos when I'm doing this, because they could interact with Lois using voice mode.
Mhm.
So let me just allow it. So you have to choose the voice that you're going to have and start a new chat. So I could have them talk to it. I can't. I think because I'm in this platform with you right now, I don't think my computer can do both. But they could use voice mode to talk with it. However, I have noticed with my students that one of the barriers to them going all in with AI, this is really embarrassing to say, is their reluctance to type and write. They are already reluctant writers, and they become reluctant prompters, which is an interesting thing. So I'd rather them take the time to write the prompt and type the prompt out. So I don't tend to use the voice very often.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I could see like Mantis, like if you were saying like personally, like I feel like
Oh,
that
yeah.
could save you time. Yeah, for sure. I could see how that would.
Yes. I mean, as an adult, yes, I would. I just don't happen to use it. I think it's just habits. I'm perfectly comfortable kind of having the typing conversation. But the times I have used it, like earlier today, I was using it. It has a plethora of different voices that you can use and things like that. So yeah, as you're asking for yourself, I just haven't. And maybe it's a privacy thing too. I have a tendency to be on the fly all the time and not have earbuds in, and so I like the quiet, right? And I'm going to ask my question. I don't need everybody in the room to hear it. I just haven't been using the voice option.
Yeah. We do work with someone who like solely uses ChatGPT and like only uses like the voice feature. Like he loves that. Yeah, which I find so interesting. But yeah, he loves it. So he's like, it saves me so much time, and I just talk to it, like I'm literally just talking to it. So
Very interesting.
yeah, yeah. So is it deep thinking, deep research?
Deep learning.
Is that only on a paid account then?
Oh, sorry, deep research. I wish I actually knew the answer, but my account is the paid account, and that's the only one I looked on. So unfortunately, I don't know what the non one, if that makes any sense, looks like. And it appeared within the last 3 weeks on mine. And
It looks like it's only available for paid users.
okay. And you know, these things change quickly, is what I have noticed. They'll pop these new features out, let them live here for a little while, and often they migrate them over. So you just really never know.
Yeah, because it says right here, previously it was exclusive to the $200 per month pro tier. So, and now it's all paid ChatGPT users. So they're definitely rolling it out to more and more people. So it could maybe be on the free. You never know.
Yeah, as things get more powerful here, it seems like things just going to keep getting pushed down the channel.
Yeah. Yeah, it says it's a paid feature. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I may have missed it, but what is some pushback you are getting from other teachers when teaching your kiddos this integration? Honestly, I haven't had any pushback. I have to preface that though, because I've always kind of been, you know, the crazy lady that's doing the weirdo things in my school. So there might be the eye roll, oh, there she goes again kind of reaction. But I've been doing virtual reality and augmented reality and all these different things for so long that this is, in some ways, maybe that's the pushback. It's just an eye roll. Like this is another one of those tech things that she's always doing. However, having said that, you know, when I was an early adopter of AI personally as a teacher, not really with the students yet. So when it first came out like 2 years ago, I was all in, and I was all in heavy duty, and they were reluctant to adopt the AI at that time. It's amazing to me to see how that pendulum has gone from, you know, oh, she's just going to be using that AI stuff. And now it's like, could you tell me how to do that? How did you do that? Could you tell me what, you know, like that has really changed in 2 years. With the students, I think there's always going to be, you know, reluctance, just because of all the concerns that we've all voiced together. But I haven't had any pushback from administration. They are extremely, extremely supportive of anything that I do with AI. You know, it's a great question. The environmental impact of AI, you know, kind of like data mining, right? You know, that excessive use of churning through this vast amounts of data. It's a realistic concern. I'd like to, I don't know how to answer it, only because I don't know the extent of, you know, the environmental impact that it's causing yet. Maybe someday when it gets bigger, it might be a problem. And, you know, I hate to kick a can down the road, but it's just, that might be a question that's bigger than I can really answer, but it's a really important one to think about. Zeros, yeah. We have teachers doing that too. And I will caution you in the use of AI detectors. So if you haven't heard this before, many of them don't work well, and they have a high level of false positive, and they specifically bias towards English language learners. They have a tendency to pick them up as having used AI when they haven't. So, you know, causing these false positives. I was doing a keynote at a college actually, and we had a deep conversation about the perils that they face in colleges because the penalty is so huge, you know. So if someone is suspected of using AI and that's cheating, they're, you know, kicked out of school. You know, they lose their tuition, and so the penalty is so great that they're very hesitant to be rapidly pursuing AI detection with the kids because of, you know, the high level of penalty. And so I think people are tiptoeing very carefully, at least in higher levels, on trying to, you know, race to accuse, essentially. In lower grades, it's not so bad, but, you know, it's so hard to tell who's doing it and who's not. We're really in a tricky spot.
Yeah, I know ChatGPT had their like proof thing, right? They like got rid of it because like it just was not accurate, and it's so hard.
Yeah. And again, I go back to, you know, the responsible instruction in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like what you're saying too, like when you know your students, you kind of know their writing versus like if it's, it's a chatbot writing it for them and stuff like that. So yeah. Okay. Well, I think those are all the questions. I know we're 5 minutes over time. So Mary, thank you so, so much for everything you shared. This was amazing. I feel like everyone's leaving hopefully with some great tangible ideas they can start incorporating into their classroom. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you everyone so much for joining us live on your busy evening, afternoon. We so appreciate your time, and we will send you an email with a link to access the replay if you had to drop off early or you missed the first half of it. You'll be able to catch some of it. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in the next one, the final one, next Tuesday.